Every single minute, an air cargo fleet sitting on the tarmac burns through $12,000. That is $12,000 gone before a single jet even takes off. You are trapped in non-negotiable aircraft leases, jet fuel contracts costing $100,000 a day, and a razor-thin 90-second sorting window where a minor 30-minute weather delay wipes out $4 million in overnight delivery guarantees. On paper, high-yield freight looks like an unbeatable monopoly, powered by an American suburban culture that demands Amazon packages on doorsteps in under 24 hours. In reality, it is a meticulously engineered liquidity trap, where massive capital expenditure collides with microscopic profit margins. To understand how this daily cash bleed destroys operators, you have to look at the sticker price that lures even seasoned executives into the trap. Take Marcus Vance, for example. Marcus spent 15 years as a senior logistics officer for a mid-size automotive parts manufacturer in the Midwest. He knew the supply chain inside out, understood freight scheduling, and saw firsthand the sheer desperation of regional corporations when a single assembly line ground to a halt over a single missing component. To an insider like Marcus, the air cargo business looked like an absolute goldmine. He was not trying to build another generic consumer delivery service. Instead, he wanted to corner the lucrative market for high-value, time-sensitive corporate freight, moving aerospace parts, medical equipment, and high-tech components between secondary industrial hubs. On paper, the financial model was breathtaking. Marcus pitched private investors with a simple, irresistible premise: $40 in gross revenue per overnight envelope and upwards of $1,500 per cargo pallet. The projections showed a staggering 35% gross margin. In the boardroom, it looked like an unassailable fortune. Demand was anchored by corporate America's obsessive shift toward just-in-time manufacturing, a strategy that eliminated local warehouse inventories and turned cargo planes into flying stockrooms. Marcus calculated that by chartering a modest fleet of 3 feeder jets and securing hub access at a regional logistics airport, he could move 60,000 pounds of high-margin freight every single night. The financial model projected $5 million in annual seller discretionary earnings within 2 years. His investors were captivated by the top-line volume, treating the massive revenue per flight as proof of concept. But Marcus fell into the classic trap that destroys first-time capital-intensive operators. He confused gross revenue with free cash flow. In high-overhead, capital-heavy industries, top-line figures are often vanity metrics hiding deep structural fragility. A spreadsheet can show a 35% gross margin, but it completely ignores the capital expenditure required to keep an aircraft airworthy before it carries its first pound of cargo. Aircraft leasing, airport slot fees, and mandatory FAA maintenance schedules represent non-negotiable debt service that devours capital long before operational profits ever show up. Marcus signed the fleet leases, secured his air operator certificate, and launched his regional air freight charter, totally unaware that his projected profits existed only in the frictionless vacuum of a spreadsheet. And spreadsheets do not account for the brutal mechanics of fixed cost rigidity once those jets hit the sky. Within 30 days of launching operations, Marcus discovered the devastating reality of operational bleed. His pristine pro forma spreadsheets dissolved under the weight of real-world overhead. The first shock to his capital reserves was maintenance CAPEX. In commercial aviation, aircraft maintenance is not a routine repair bill you pay when something breaks. The FAA mandates rigorous calendar-based inspection schedules known as C-checks and D-checks. Even if a jet sits idle on the tarmac, its airframe and engines accrue mandatory inspection liabilities. Leasing companies require operators to pay monthly maintenance reserves, eating up $30,000 per engine every month, regardless of flight hours or freight revenue. Then came the brutal necessity of the hot spare. In the overnight cargo network, reliability is not a marketing feature, it's the entire value proposition. If a primary aircraft suffers a mechanical failure at 10 o'clock at night in Indianapolis, 40 tons of time-sensitive cargo is left stranded. Under strict corporate service level agreements, missing the morning delivery deadline triggers financial penalties that instantly wipe out the profit margin of every shipment on board. To protect his contracts, Marcus was forced to lease a 4th aircraft to serve exclusively as a standby hot spare. This jet generated zero revenue, yet it bled $45,000 a day in lease debt, crew standby compensation, and hangar parking fees, sitting dark in a hangar purely as an insurance policy against operational breakdown. To compound his losses, Marcus got caught in the ruthless vice of the sort window penalty. Hub airports operate on rigid, synchronized landing and departure slots. If one of Marcus's feeder flights arrived 20 minutes late due to headwinds, it missed its allocated conveyor belt sort window. The hub operator levied immediate congestion surcharges, while ground crews scrambled to manually reroute the delayed freight. A single 20-minute air traffic delay spiraled into tens of thousands of dollars in emergency ground handling fees and contractual refund claims from angry corporate clients. However, the ultimate financial drain gutting Marcus's cash flow was not in the air, it was on the ground. It was the insidious phenomenon known as the last-mile residential bleed. Driven by expectations of modern American suburban living, consumers expecting overnight delivery on a $15 retail item demanded seamless door-to-door service without paying the true cost of transportation. While Marcus's core business was built around business-to-business freight, dropping 50 heavy pallets at a single industrial loading dock, his corporate clients began pushing residential drop-offs into the mix to satisfy e-commerce demands. Delivering 50 packages to 50 individual suburban homes across a 30-mile radius shattered his operational economics. Fuel consumption surged as delivery vans idled in suburban traffic, labor costs skyrocketed with doorstep drop-offs, and driver turnover created constant recruitment expenses. Marcus was paying premium air cargo rates to fly lightweight residential packages that yielded a microscopic margin, only to lose money hand over fist the moment those packages hit a delivery van. Scaling up volume did not save him. Every new residential parcel added more variable costs than top-line revenue, accelerating his daily liquidity drain. Marcus thought his operational nightmare was unique to his mid-sized fleet. He was wrong. The exact same financial cancer was eating away at a $60 billion Wall Street titan. Marcus's mid-tier air fleet collapse was not an isolated failure of poor management. It was a microscopic reflection of a massive seismic shift tearing through the entire global logistics industry. To understand why a mid-tier operator drowns in debt, you have to look at the macro war fought between Wall Street titan FedEx and the unstoppable e-commerce juggernaut Amazon. For decades, the overnight air cargo model was built on a single economic principle, the hub and spoke network. FedEx Express poured tens of billions of dollars into building an unassailable asset-heavy moat, purchasing massive aircraft fleets and constructing monolithic automated sorting superhubs like their World Hub facility in Memphis. The premise was simple: concentrate global package volume into one central point in the dead of night, achieve maximum aircraft capacity utilization on every flight, and extract high-margin yield from business clients who gladly paid premium rates to guarantee next-day delivery. For nearly 40 years, this asset-heavy monopoly printed cash. But then came the explosive rise of residential e-commerce, bringing a fundamental shift in consumer behavior that permanently broke the unit economics of the legacy air cargo model. American suburban consumers no longer wanted to pay $40 to ship a high-value contract overnight. Instead, they demanded free 2-day, 1-day, and same-day delivery on cheap $15 consumer goods. Legacy carriers found themselves trapped inside an enormous asset-liability mismatch. They were flying 700 jet fleets designed for high-margin business freight, only to fill those cargo holds with low-margin residential e-commerce parcels that lost money on every single last-mile doorstep delivery. Then, Amazon entered the arena and completely redefined the economics of speed. While legacy carriers were locked into billions in fixed aviation capital expenditure, Amazon deployed a strategic countermove known as asset-light arbitrage. Instead of spending decades building a massive central air fleet to fly packages thousands of miles back and forth across the country, Amazon bypassed the traditional hub-and-spoke network entirely. They decentralized their physical footprint, building a dense web of regional fulfillment centers and suburban sorting facilities strategically positioned within 30 miles of 80% of the American population. By pre-positioning inventory right next door to the suburban consumer, Amazon eliminated the need for expensive long-haul air transport altogether. If an item is already sitting in a fulfillment warehouse 20 minutes from your house, you don't need to fly it to Memphis on a $200 million cargo jet at 2 in the morning. You simply put it on a local delivery van and drive it to the doorstep. Analytically, when Amazon Air did build out its regional air fleet in Cincinnati, it did so not as a standalone airline trying to turn a profit on freight yields, but as a tactical loss leader designed to optimize its broader retail and cloud computing ecosystems. Masterfully, Amazon transformed transportation from a profit center into an operational utility, undercutting legacy carriers on price while delivering goods faster. In 2019, when FedEx walked away from its Amazon shipping contracts, it signaled the end of an era. FedEx was forced to launch Network 2.0, a painful, multi-billion-dollar structural consolidation designed to merge its separate express and ground networks, permanently ground hundreds of legacy cargo jets, and shrink its facility footprint in a desperate bid to strip out fixed overhead. The legacy giants realized too late that in a modern economy, the winner is not the player who owns the largest, most expensive capital assets. The winner is the player who controls the physical distance between those assets and the evolving habits of the end consumer. Compounding this crisis for mid-sized operators was the financial engineering of private equity firms. Sensing blood in the water as regional air freight companies struggled with capital constraints, private equity firms moved in with a classic liquidity trap, sale-and-leaseback transactions. Desperate for immediate cash to fund operational burn, fleet operators were persuaded to sell their owned aircraft and facilities to private equity syndicates, only to immediately lease them back under long-term triple-net lease agreements. On paper, this financial maneuver injected instant liquidity onto the balance sheet, allowing executives to show short-term capital reserves. In reality, it stripped the business of its underlying collateral asset value while locking it into rigid, high-yield lease liabilities that could never be renegotiated. When freight volumes inevitably dipped or jet fuel prices spiked, private equity landlords continued to extract non-negotiable monthly rent payments. If the operator defaulted, the private equity firm seized the aircraft and liquidated the underlying assets, leaving the operational company bankrupt and its shareholders completely wiped out. The game was rigged from the start. When your business model is trapped between sky-high fixed CAPEX and shrinking margins, there is only one way out: a ruthless structural restructuring. Standing at the edge of insolvency, Marcus Vance had only one path toward financial survival. He had to execute a complete structural overhaul of his business model. The fundamental error that brought Marcus to his knees was accepting fixed cost rigidity in a business driven by volatile freight demand. To survive, he had to convert fixed capital liabilities into flexible variable operational expenses. First, Marcus negotiated an aggressive exit from his long-term aircraft capital leases, liquidating his owned and dry-leased aircraft. In their place, he pivoted to wet leasing flexible capacity through ACMI agreements, where a third-party provider supplies the aircraft, crew, maintenance, and insurance strictly on an as-needed basis. Instead of bleeding $45,000 a day for a standby hot spare sitting idle in a hangar, Marcus paid only for block hours actually flown. If regional freight volume dropped by 30% in a slow quarter, his fleet overhead automatically contracted by 30%. His debt service liabilities were replaced by operational flexibility. Next, Marcus restructured his commercial contracts to eliminate the toxic, unhedged risks of energy market volatility and fuel price spikes. He instituted strict fuel surcharge indexing tied directly to spot market jet fuel prices, legally transferring fuel price risk back to the shippers. If jet fuel prices surged overnight, the financial burden shifted automatically to the client rather than eroding Marcus's operational liquidity. Finally, Marcus confronted the toxic drain of last-mile residential delivery by instituting dynamic pricing thresholds. He established strict minimum density requirements and surcharges for residential drop-offs. If a corporate client wanted a low-margin package delivered to a suburban doorstep, they paid the full economic cost, including last-mile labor, fuel, and vehicle depreciation. If the client refused to pay the adjusted rate, Marcus walked away from the business. By shedding negative margin residential volume, Marcus sacrificed vanity top-line revenue to protect his bottom-line free cash flow. This structural pivot from an asset-heavy fixed cost structure to an asset-light variable cost structure is the exact same playbook executed by surviving industry titans. When legacy carriers consolidate operations, shut down underperforming regional hubs, and shift freight capacity onto regional trucking partners, they are breaking fixed cost rigidity to defend capital reserves. Surviving in a capital-intensive industry does not require owning the largest fleet or building the grandest infrastructure. It requires maintaining absolute financial agility, protecting cash flow at all costs, and ensuring that every single unit of capacity yields a positive economic return. The lessons from the tarmac are not just for airline executives. They apply directly to how you manage your own capital. The ultimate defensive lesson here applies directly to your personal portfolio. Stay away from high-leverage businesses whose operational margins are continuously cannibalized by non-negotiable fixed overhead. When analyzing an asset class or stock, never fall in love with top-line revenue growth while ignoring structural liquidity risk. Before allocating capital, evaluate your own life through the lens of fixed burn rate, eliminating rigid debt obligations that restrict your financial agility during economic downturns. Drop a comment below with the next $10 billion asset class you want us to dissect. Share this video with an investor who needs a serious reality check. Stay vigilant and remember, cash flow is reality. Everything else is just accounting. This video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute financial or investment advice.